Don Lemon went on CNN this morning on the new CNN morning show with Caitlin Collins and Poppy Harlow. And as they were discussing Nikki Haley's presidential announcement, in which she took a shot at the idea of anyone who is president being over the age of 75, an age that encompasses not only Joe Biden, who is 80, but Donald Trump, who is 76, and said it was time for a younger generation of leaders. And basically said that they were out of their prime as leaders. And I think probably when you're in your 70s, you're not as elite of a decision maker, generally speaking, as you were in your 40s and 50s in general, right? There are exceptions. Warren Buffett still seems to be pretty doggone good at analyzing data, and I believe he's in his 80s. There are a lot of people out there whose brains function very, very well in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. But in general, most of those people, I think, would have to acknowledge they're not as good as they were in their 40s or 50s. The reason why I bring this up is Don Lemon followed up that by saying that Nikki Haley needed to be careful what she was saying because she's outside of her prime, because he looked it up on Google and it said women were in their prime in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. So much of this is funny to me. First, that Don Lemon's research for his television show was to sit down in front of Google, assuming that he actually did this, and type in when are women in their prime. Because that's not very much research, first of all. I spend, whatever you like me or hate me, I spend hours every day reading voluminous amounts of material so I can sit down and discuss with my audience all the issues of the day. So the idea that you would just sit in front of Google and just Google like an opinion-based question and whatever Google returned to you would be what you would take on television on CNN is embarrassing. But also it totally misses Nikki Haley's point, which is we have different ages at which we hit prime ability levels. For instance, I'm not a great athlete, right? Never have been. But to the extent that I was an athlete, I peaked as an athlete, as almost all men do, in my 20s on a physical nature, right? Like 27, 28 years old, for most men, is when you reach your apex of physical athletic ability. Now, that's if you train. Maybe you can extend that peak. Maybe you can take it into your early 30s if you're a great athlete. Regardless, we all know that athletic mortality, for instance, is far sooner than physical mortality. Tom Brady was a revelation because he could play quarterback at 45 years old. That was a huge story because most of the other guys were like Patrick Mahomes, who's 27 years old. That is, age impacts your ability to succeed at a variety of different professions. I've ruminated about this on the radio before. When does a radio show host peak? What is like my prime as a radio show host? I like to think it's still in front of me, that I can continue to get better, that I haven't already peaked. I would like to think, for instance, if you're a lawyer, that you could be a great trial lawyer in your 40s, 50s, and 60s, maybe even into your 70s. If you're a woman, most women are in their prime for having children in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. So this is really crazy. Most people out there, I think, if you had to choose right now, what generation would you like the president to be a member of? I think most people would say 50s. I think most people out there, if you had to pick a generation, would say the 40s, the 50s, or the 60s would be the ages that you would prefer the president of the United States to be. So Nikki would be right in the middle of that universe, right? Nikki Haley at 51 years old would be square in the middle of where a lot of people would think the age of the president of the United States should be. And so this is really strange by Don Lemon. Also, I would point out, CNN banned me for saying that I was a believer in the First Amendment and boobs. They wouldn't allow me to ever be on the network again because I shared that opinion. Now, Don Lemon has since come out and put forward a statement of response on this issue. And he says as follows, the reference I made to a woman's prime this morning was inartful and irrelevant, as colleagues and loved ones have pointed out, and I regret it. A woman's age doesn't define her either personally or professionally. I have countless women in my life who prove that every day. It's weird. It's weak. I think what Don Lemon said is what he meant. I just think he's not very smart. And I think he's getting exposed alongside of Poppy Harlow and Caitlin Collins in a way that he didn't when he had an entire staff writing everything he said on the teleprompter for him to read. It's worth mentioning that Don Lemon is 56 years old, and I would suggest that he is past his prime as a broadcaster. That's typically what happens when they take away your primetime show and make you host a show in the mornings instead. So, Don Lemon, ridiculous statement. I don't believe in cancel culture, so I don't think he should lose his job or be suspended or any of that stuff. I think it's stupid. But I do think he revealed himself, as live radio and live television often does over time. You reveal yourself to the audience watching. And what I would say is I think it's instructive. No one at CNN ever says or would even consider saying that Kamala Harris was past her prime. She's in her upper 50s. Or that Hillary Clinton was in her prime. She's in her 60s when she ran for president. I would also point out Margaret Thatcher, kind of a really successful leader, was older than Nikki Haley is now when she became the iron-willed prime minister of Great Britain. Don Lemon, not smart, not well said, continuing to put his own foot in his mouth and hasten, I believe, his exit from CNN programming in general, as that show is not doing well at all.